those of you that are new, I always make sure I say this. This series was Darren's idea. Darren is our director of special events, and it was his idea to sort of tie this into trying to promote local restaurants and bars. So Darren, take it away.
So this week, I'm really excited because I have been holding on to this one for a while. This is the local, which is right down near the Civic Theater. Yes, some of you are applauding, you know it. It's actually on 4th Street, right across from the Grant Grill of the Grant Hotel. And I know it's downtown, and that's not someplace that a lot of you people maybe are going right now. But I will tell you, they're still open. They're doing carry-out service, and they're doing a pretty good business too. In fact, the beer that we had advertised for tonight is no longer available. Yay! That was the Peace Out 2020. So I think people may have bought it just for the name, because I like the name a lot. But anyway, I'm excited about the local. They do offer us a 10% discount, by the way, now, if you come in with a ticket from San Diego Opera. I recommend the place wholeheartedly. The food is ridiculously good. It's weird. It's like it's a restaurant bar, and this food is fantastic. Really, really good. And they have their own resident brewing, which is the name of it. And we're going to be talking to Craig right now. Craig is talking with us about the local and about this beer. So Craig, what is going on at the local right now?
Yeah, so thank you. So my name is Craig Nelson. I'm the head brewer at Resident Brewing. So we are attached with the local. If you've ever been in there, you see, if you go to the back, you can see the brewery that is connected adjacent to the rear of the local. So the local is open, like you said, for to-go orders right now. And we are selling a lot of beer to go, like this coconut IPA that I'm drinking right now. We have cans, 16-ounce cans, 4-pack. And so we also have a lot of other IPAs and other beers, our blonde ales in cans as well. And you can order through our social media accounts, Instagram and Facebook. There's a link to our online Square store, and it's super easy to purchase. Or you could just drop in the local and say you want some beer to go, and somebody that's working at the bar will help you out with that, and they can ring you up and everything, and you could take beer to go along with your food. So yeah, so we've been selling a lot of beer, so it's really good that people are helping out and buying beer to go to help us out in this situation. Obviously, money is really tight for us, and we really appreciate anybody that comes by to buy food or beer to go. It's really a big help to us right now. So
you guys, it's such a good restaurant, you know, the food, the drink and everything, but the people there are the best. They're funny, they're smart, they're dry-witted, my people. It's just a really fun place to go. It's a boisterous place to go. If there's anything going on, football or baseball, whatever's going on, be aware that that's going to be being watched. And it's just part of the fun. And I can't recommend going down there. I had the ahi roll, ahi tuna wrap, thank you, today. Ugh, so good.
Really good.
So, yeah, so thank you so much for being here, Craig. I'm really excited to taste this. I'm not really an IPA drinker, but I'm more of a wine guy. But I'm going to enjoy this. It smells really good.
Oh, thank you.
It's got
I have to say, let's say cheers, and then I want to say something. Cheers. Thank you very much,
Cheers.
Craig. Happy Aperitivo, everyone. Happy New Year. This is our first one for the new year. So cheers.
New Year. Thank you.
So Craig, we two interesting, well, I don't know if it's interesting, but two stories I'll share. So end of my first week working here, the staff took me to sort of celebrate me coming and working and leading San Diego Opera to the local. So that's where we had our first welcome new general director staff party, which was nice. And then we did this holiday opera, which many of you remember, that's a military themed opera called All Is Calm. It's an a cappella choral work. And we used 16 men and Christmas music, military music, very interesting piece. We did that 2 years ago, and during rehearsals, we did a social media sort of takeover one night with all the guys coming in and drinking beer and singing Wassail. You guys may know that, the sort of English Wassail song. So the opera really likes the local because it's nearby, and it is a place that lots of opera chorus members go and drink. I'm going to say after rehearsals because I'm not going to ever admit that any of them go before rehearsal. So they go after rehearsals. So we have a close connection to the local, and we're glad to have you here. I think all of you know that we're struggling to try to find the business model that works for an opera, but you guys know that restaurants are too. So any way that we can help out local restaurants is very important. So thanks very much. Thanks for being here.
Cheers.
Darren, do you want to give a little rundown on how people participate today? Do you want to do your little?
Well, David's going to interview Anna, obviously. And then if you have anything to say it in the chat and we will bring up the question. And then at the end, we'll have open discussion, Q&A at the end, a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. And just raise your hand. I'll keep an eye on the photos to see if anybody has anything to say.
Great. So there's two ways. You can type something in chat, and then Darren will make sure that he's keeping ahead of those. We might respond in the middle, we might respond at the end. Also, if you want to, you can put a wave up if you know how to do that as a sort of an emoji here, but you can also wave your hand, and Darren will keep in touch with that. He'll send a message to me or he will text me, so I make sure we have a sense of questions. So now let's get started. Our wonderful guest is Ana María Martínez, who it's such a treat to say hello to again. Ana María, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so everyone knows, I guess, I'm just going to assume everyone here knows, they heard you as a wonderful Mimi recently, and you left San Diego, end of October, beginning of November. So 2 and something months ago. What's life been like since San Diego?
Well, first it was wonderful to make my debut with your company, and the experience was fantastic. Not only was it wonderful to make music again and to work again with colleagues, but you all took every measure possible for our safety, for our well-being, and emotionally that took a huge stress off of all of us. So it was one of the happiest experiences I've ever had. I still have my sticker, San Diego Opera.
Well done. Yeah.
And if you can see behind me, I had it professionally framed.
Awesome. That's great.
So I'm speaking to you from my office. Anyway, that just goes to show what a beautiful experience that was. And as everyone here knows, the Bohème that we did together was the first opera to be done in the United States during the pandemic. And the brilliant idea to do it as a drive-in, it's just incredible. And so it's inspired many, many people, and we're all deeply grateful to you for this because it gave us a lifeline. So I came home, and of course I go back into mom mode. And I'm also teaching some as artist in residence at Rice University, and I'm artistic advisor at Houston Grand Opera. So that can take on many different forms. Sometimes it's working on ideas together with a specific department. And one of the things I love doing is working with the young artists. And also one of the things I was involved in most recently is the whole competition process for the Concert of Arias competition, which happens once a year. It's also the biggest fundraiser for HGO. And from there, not only do the applicants have a chance to get to the finals and win, although I always say it doesn't matter if you didn't win. Honestly, it really doesn't. It's great if you do. I know it feels great in the moment, but in the long run, you have to think of the long distance of your career. It doesn't matter. So I think they're all winners. And then they also can be invited to join the Young Artist Program. So there's been a lot of that. I try to get in some time to exercise. Not always possible, but it's what's kept me most calm in moments of stress and most organized mentally. I'm a big fan of running. Not huge distances, but that's what I like to do to keep my center.
Yeah, your head clear, right?
Yeah. And
So
then,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that for some of us singers, and I'm going to include myself here, some of the things that we end up putting on the back burner is actually working on our instruments and warming up. And there's so many other things to do that we're trying to manage and move forward during COVID. So I've started to, again, after the Bohème, which is why I say one of the reasons it gave me a lifeline was to get back into that discipline mode. So I felt like myself again. I felt complete again. And now I want to start working again because I have to put Tosca in my, I got to put it right here.
Yeah.
That's not one that I thought I'd sing, but all right, let's try it. I'm at that point.
I could absolutely hear you sing that because I heard you sing the Don Carlo in LA. And they're different beasts altogether, but clearly your voice is, it has heft now in a way that, and a sense of darkness, I think that it can hold up to that rep. I'd love to. Where are you doing Tosca?
Philadelphia.
Oh,
For Philadelphia. And we have to do it in concert form now at a different venue.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy that they're doing it in concert form.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
So going back to the health thing that you mentioned. So for me, I was working out really regularly with the trainer, and I'm still doing that some one-on-one private training, very limited gym that has garage doors that open, so it still can be an operating business. But I've taken on yoga, which I didn't do before. So I started that during COVID. So I do yoga 3 days a week, and I don't run. I used to run, but I try to walk aggressively, but maybe 2 to 3 miles a day if I can. And for me, that's the same thing. It's just like getting my head clear and, out of my body and feeling centered again. And also, I think what a lot of us are feeling in this world right now is alone and sort of trapped inside. And so to actually step outside in a way that you can feel safe is really good for all of us, I think.
Yeah, especially getting some sunlight.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting that and fresh air. I think that's important. I agree with you. When it's an aggressive walk, with the purpose of clearing your mind, where you have determination in that walk, I think it's just as effective.
Yep, I love it. So let's go back to your childhood and let's let people know you a little better.
Okay.
So were you born in Puerto Rico?
I was. Yes.
So tell us about your childhood. Your mother was an opera singer as well, correct?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
tell us about that, and tell us about the role that music played in your life as a child.
Well, I've often thought, and I really think this is just the way it is, that music has been as vital for me as any vital organ, and so natural to be around it. There's not a day that has gone by that I haven't had music in my life. And in the beginning of my life, and also when I was in utero, I have my mother to thank because she was constantly singing and constantly working on things. And she thought I might be a dancer because she was supposed to do the soprano soloist in the Fauré Requiem in Puerto Rico with the symphony orchestra. I believe it was Pablo Casals conducting. Because she was pregnant, she knew that she would be 8 months pregnant at that time. And little did she know, and I found out too, that by that point, the baby has dropped a bit. So that's when you can sing phrases that are like 2 pages long. And you just feel like Wonder Woman at that point, vocally at least. But she thought well and ahead and decided to be in the chorus instead. And during one of the movements where you have very steady percussion, and the percussion is quite the protagonist, she said I was rotating, I was moving to the beat, and she said, "Oh, my baby's going to be a dancer." So anyway, I did not go for that.
Perhaps kicking a little, maybe you were. Yeah.
I don't think I kicked. I moved, but I didn't kick. But all kidding aside, although that's a true story, we moved to Tallahassee when I was about 5 or 6 months old because my parents went there to get their doctorates. My father was an electrical engineer at the time that I was born and one of the original coders for IBM. He's originally he passed away recently, but he was from Havana. And my mother was a scientist first. She had a minor in music, but she had a degree in biology and chemistry. So after I was born and he's having the success with IBM, he tells my mother, "This isn't really my calling. I think my calling is psychology." So, fast forward, they both went. She got accepted into the master's program for music, for voice. He got accepted into the psychology department. He got his PhD. She got her doctorate in music. So my formative first 4 years of those formative years were in Tallahassee.
Wow.
And so I began speaking English with a drawl, a Southern drawl, which I did not keep. It would have come in handy here in Houston. And yeah, I mean, you go where your parents are. And that was a very happy time. It was a very happy time for the three of us. And then we went back to Puerto Rico for 2 years. And then my father was accepted into the William Allenson White Institute for Psychoanalytic Training in New York. And my mother wanted to give her career a shot. So we went to New York.
Oh.
All of that to say, I was raised in New York City as of the age of 6. And every summer I went to Puerto Rico for the full length of summer vacation, which is quite long. And thanks to that, I was able to keep a very strong connection with my relatives that were in Puerto Rico. At this point, a lot of my father's relatives were there from Cuba, and my mother's as well. And that was always important to me because I'm an only child, the only one in the family. That's an only. And my cousins were and are extremely important to me. We're like siblings.
Mm.
And I love those summers in Puerto Rico. I never wanted to leave, and I was counting the days to go back. But yeah, music. Then growing up in New York, there was a lot of loneliness there. My parents were very busy. Eventually, they divorced when I was 10. And so I had a lot of free time on my hands. And I always thank my lucky stars that I did not have the curiosity to get in trouble. For various reasons. I mean, the curiosity might have been there. I won't deny that. But I feared the wrath of my Cuban father more than anything. And my other lifeline was music. I was much more interested in coming home at the end of the school day and plunking out anything on the piano and seeing West Side Story, the film, for the 18th time. And playing with my cat, and just, I guess I was kind of geeky, and I was okay being by myself. I mean, I had my friends, but I was okay just coming home. And I look back on that and I think, wow, that's, not many kids would do that. But
I lived in New York before here for 15 years, and I always found it kind of remarkable that there are a lot of youth in New York that are still, that are independent and self-sufficient, travel fine on the subway alone. You can tell they know how to be alone. I think there's something about New York that your aloneness doesn't feel alone because you're side by side with a lot of other people being alone. So when you're on a subway with 30 other people that are alone, you sort of feel okay. You make peace with being alone in a city like New York, easier than in other places. I think that was my experience when I was.
That's a beautiful observation. As far as independence, I was taking the public bus system across town. We lived on West 70th and Amsterdam, where Broadway and Amsterdam fork,
Sure.
Where there's a McDonald's downstairs.
Yeah,
I don't know
sure.
that building. Anyway, 201 West 70th Street. Anyway, so I was going from there to 91st Street and Fifth Avenue for the last 2 years of my schooling there. That's a convent of the Sacred Heart. And I had to take 2 buses there and 2 buses back at the age of 10.
Yeah. Kind of amazing.
I would not let my son do that now, and he's going to be 14. I'm not. I would put like a chip under his neck to be able to, like a GPS tracking device.
Right.
I would, the way the world is now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was left to my devices, and you grow up very quickly, and you learn to observe everything, and you have eyes in the back of your head. That's for sure, and it served me well later on in life.
That's great. So education, I read, and it was Wikipedia, so there, who knows who's adding that to you.
Who knows?
But did you start off wanting to go into music theater?
Yes, that was my passion. I mentioned West Side Story earlier, and that's what made me fall in love with it. My mother actually did West Side Story in concert form when I was 4. So she had the album, the movie soundtrack album, at home, and so we were listening to that, and I went to her performance, of course. And I just fell in love with it. And I loved the combination of the music that, for those, what I would call the more classics of the musical theater, for those, the the music, the singing is more what we would call legit versus, and not that the other type of singing isn't legit, because you need a technique for everything, but it's not the belting type. It's not the rock sound. It's more of a classical sound. More like, if all of you are familiar with Audra McDonald, it's that type of singing. And I adore Audra. We went to school together at Juilliard. So it was more, that was my focus. If I could do the Rodgers and Hammerstein, you know, that kind of thing. So my first attempt was in the Boston Conservatory of Music, although I did a summer before my senior year of high school at the Berklee College of Music, which is jazz. And I love jazz, but I can't scat to save my life. But I learned so much. I tried, but I learned a little bit of it. I learned to understand the format that gives you then the freedom that jazz provides. So that was an incredible experience. So I went to the Boston Conservatory of Music for 1 year, and their specialty is musical theater. They have all different departments as well, but that I think is the best one in the country in how it prepares their artists for the musical theater stage. My voice teacher very kindly, although it broke my heart for about a week, at the end of the first semester, she said, I have to tell you, I don't think that you're going to find it easy in musical theater. Your voice is more for classical. And that's when the direction started to shift. You were getting things like Rent. You were getting away from the more classical vocal approach. And she said, I don't imagine you being able to be successful right now. I have to tell you that, but I can see you being successful in classical music. So I went home and I cried. Only because, and this is an existential thing, but you can tell I'm the daughter of an analyst. She was basically telling me that I would be good at something my mother had been doing. And that's the last thing I wanted to do. And I thought, but that's her thing. I don't want to do that, et cetera, et cetera. But then I realized, I have to be true to myself. And the bottom line is I want to devote my life to music. How can I best do that? So then I thought long and hard. And that summer I returned to New York. And I did two fun things that I don't know why I put three. Two fun things that really impacted me. I was a teacher's aide for a classroom during the summer for parents that mainly worked in the hospital on the east side, one of the hospitals on the east side, for 3 and 4 year olds. And that taught me so much. And at the same time, I was cast as a dancer. And this is why the program, I had taken dance as a kid, but the Boston Conservatory trained you well as a dancer. With the Tisch School of the Arts, NYU's production of Cabaret. And then I was reading, well, yes, I guess it was three things. That's why subconsciously I put three. I was reading Rollo May's book entitled Man's Search for Himself. Rollo May was my father's analyst and the one who trained my father to be an analyst in New York. And Rollo May wrote beautiful books. Some of them are out of print, but I recommend anyone who's interested in that type of thinking to get them. Beautiful. And towards the end of the book, in italics, it said, freedom does not equal rebellion. Why do I bring that up? I didn't tell you first. My father's a perfectionist, and he thinks everyone should be as well. But he also thinks that once you know what your gifts are, you should aim as high as you can and devote your entire life to developing the one gift through which that you were born with, through which you want to reach your highest potential. And I butted heads a lot with my father. Later on, I would learn that we're just very similar. And he was the one who to tell me, you need to try for Juilliard. You should audition for Juilliard. And I said, I don't want to. That's not my place. I don't think I'm going to fit in. And the truth is, I didn't think I could get in. But towards the end of already reading this book by Rollo May, having the experience at NYU in their musical, having the experience of the Boston Conservatory, and already knowing that my voice was going to be better suited for classical, and reading freedom does not equal rebellion, I thought, so my father and I can have the same thought in the same direction, but I'm still doing my own thing. And I auditioned. And Rose Bampton, may she rest in peace, was the only one who said, I'll take her into my studio.
Wow.
And that means a lot because she sang a lot with Caruso.
Yeah.
And she was one of Toscanini's favorite sopranos.
Yeah.
And it meant a lot that she heard something in me that made her think of the older time of singing.
Mhm.
And then I have to add that my mother, in her voice lessons with Eleanor Stever, when she couldn't get a babysitter, guess who tagged along? And I was about 8 years old, and I would draw cartoons and put stickers on them and give them to Miss Stever because I thought she was both intimidating, bigger than life, and something about her was very warm.
Mm.
Although she didn't necessarily want to share it, but she was warm, and I wanted to give her something. And then my mother reminds me that when she was working on the role of Liu from Turandot with Miss Stever, one of the times that I was there, apparently not paying attention and drawing, we went back home and my mother started to work on Signore Ascolta, the aria again. And I went up to her and I said, "That's not what Miss Stever told you to do." So
Yeah, be careful inviting your children to.
but what I didn't know at the time was that Miss Stever was indirectly also teaching me.
Of course.
And all of the knowledge that she brought with her.
Yeah.
Not only teaching my mother, and my mother, of course, was my first voice teacher,
Mm.
all of that, which I think is what has served me incredibly well, and also probably what Miss Bampton heard in some way.
Mm.
And then
So
what I try to
that's
teach.
that's an amazing sort of two stories coming together at a point. Um, when I hear you sing, I do feel like it's not an old voice. That's not what I mean, but there's sort of a sense of it's anchored in a real bel canto technique because your legato is very, very beautiful. And if all of you know, legato is sort of smoothness in music, and there's ways that a violin achieves that with a bow, but a voice has to achieve it in very different ways through connecting vowels in words. And but also we have a word in teaching of singing, passaggio, which is the passage. And you are incredibly careful, and I mean that in the best way. I don't mean restricted, but the way you shape your passaggio is so beautifully crafted. So your voice lines up just exquisitely all the time. Yeah.
It's interesting. Thank you very much for that. The passaggio can make or break a singer. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge how you just did this with the passaggio, because that's exactly how I see it when I'm teaching it now. And my mother would say things like, and you have to know where the passaggio is. So any of you that read music and you're looking at the staff, let's say in G clef, treble clef, you've got, usually it's like a D sharp, or let's say E flat, E, F, F sharp for a soprano, for a tenor. Mezzos will be just a little bit lower, maybe a half step lower. That you cannot approach that with heft. Some singers, especially in their youth, get carried away, and after that passaggio, you're going to go usually to the high notes. And if you give it too much heft, you won't bloom. So the image I give to singers when I'm trying to explain it to them is an hourglass. So you have the neck of the hourglass is the passaggio, and the bloom is going to be the top of that. And then also you have this in the bottom. If you also put too much drive in that passaggio, the bottom won't have the same resonance. So it's a very delicate thing, but you must stay anchored. The trick is that a lot of singers will then get off of their anchor, which is usually in the lower abdominal area, in order to thin out, not heft up the sound. So you have to stay very, very anchored, even more so than when you go to the top. But keep it lean, keep it very, very lean, so then you can blossom.
I think a lot of people that hear opera singers think that the top requires the most work, and you have to be very conscious of it. Of course, it needs to be shaped well, but getting to the top allows you to be there. That's where a lot of people struggle. And you just talked about the bottom. I hear a lot of sopranos in particular now sing like this, where the top is round and then the middle has some shape, but the bottom is just non-existent. And then the top winds up being not round and beautiful. It's sort of screechy and disconnected.
It can be. I think that there can be, I've heard people that aren't familiar with opera singers say, "Oh, so you're an opera singer, okay," and they're a little confused. Well, what kind of singer are you? What voice type? Soprano. Oh, I don't like sopranos. They scream too much.
Right.
And then I say, well, no, we're many, and we belong to a very special club. It's called the Soprano Club.
Right.
But I think that what happens is that people tend to just drive too much, and the anchor is from here or just slightly lower up,
Yeah.
and it becomes very, very driven. And I well, on a regular basis, have to try to find the vocabulary to emphasize the importance of having the middle of the voice be your solid, solid ground. And then I like to implement some chest voice exercises. Very easy, no jamming there.
Yeah.
But to mix the head and the chest, so that you can navigate to the lower register. That's my mission, is to try to teach that as well as pianissimi.
So you mentioned earlier, we've talking a lot about technique. We're going to get on to other stuff, but
Sorry, I'm probably boring.
I love this because I was a teacher too, so this is great. But so you mentioned having a baby drop and singing on top of that.
Yeah.
I mean, those of you that have had children can imagine that when the baby moves down in the birth canal, there's another word, appoggio, that's an Italian word to lean a little bit. And it's a technique that we use as singers where you sort of lean against your diaphragm in a way. And I can imagine if you have that beautiful low space of a baby to be able to sort of lean against, that must be an amazing experience as a singer, frankly.
It was. And I sang throughout my pregnancy. I even performed a bit throughout my pregnancy. I canceled I sang up to my 6th month. And then I canceled the rest of the pregnancy. And it's great because I had never heard of this thing. I later learned it's called the nesting period, where you literally, it's like a bird making a nest. I've never been neat and tidy in my life. I accumulate stuff. And I was purging. I said, I don't recognize myself and I like it. So I organized everything. I said, this human being is entering the world. He must come into a clean home. It was crazy. But yes, having the baby while still in utero after the baby dropped there was fantastic. And also before he was born, I said, oh dear, you haven't heard some of the greats yet. You haven't heard Traviata, you haven't heard Bohème. And there was one more. And so I took out my scores alone at home, a cappella, plunking out a few notes at the piano, and I sang all of the highlights of the roles that I had sung in those operas, and I rubbed my belly. I said, okay, now you can be born. You've heard the great masterpieces in utero, which I think has an effect on the baby. Yeah. And then he was born early on my birthday.
Oh, what a nice gift.
What a gift, huh?
Nice birthday gift. All right, so this is great. I could talk with you about singing forever. So you went to Juilliard. After Juilliard, was that pretty quick to your connection, McCollum competition in Houston and Houston Grand Opera Young Artist Studio?
Pretty much. I graduated from my master's. I did bachelor's and master's at Juilliard. Yeah. And I graduated in 93. And then the competition, so that's May of 93. The competition was February of 94. But before that, just slightly before that, I did an audition for Houston Grand Opera just to see if I could get hired to sing there. My manager at the time, Henri Grenier, I don't know if you ever have come across Henri. He lives he's a violinist. I mean, he was always a violinist and a beautiful pianist. Managed singers for many years and decided to go back to his roots of playing the violin, and he's part of a quintet. It's fantastic. He had me audition for them, and David Gockley said to him, and Henri related to me, he said, she's very talented. I can see a good future for her. However, I think she's still a little green. And I would like for her, and it's true, I mean, at Juilliard, when you're in a degree, I'm sure, and I hope things have changed, but when I was there, if you were in the degree program, you did not get a major role on the stage. You just did not have stage experience. So I would seek out and sign out the recital hall to just perform, put little things together with my classmates to just do something, because you need that stage experience. Anyway, he said she's a little green, and I'd like for her to do the competition. I'll put her in the semifinal round right away. And then I also invite her to be in the Young Artist program. For the following year, I already had a contract in Germany and in Minnesota Opera. So David knew that if I went, it would be for 1 year, and he very graciously accepted that. That changed my life. So I placed first in the competition. I made it to the final round and then got first place, and I was there for a year. I was given Micaela second cast in Carmen, which was a life changer.
Sure.
the structure. My father would always say that he'd call me and leave me messages. He was a very disciplined man who would say, you need to focus and you need to have structure. And this opportunity with Houston Grand Opera is exactly what you need. And that's what's going to help you have your footing to move forward. So that year in between, I did a lot of other competitions and I worked all sorts of different jobs, including, drum roll please, bartending at the Roxy. The Roxy does not exist anymore. It was on 18th and 10th.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yes. I would do that 1 or 2 nights a week. And that's what actually helped me during my master's. I did that. That is what helped me pay for my master's. It paid my rent. I mean, that's how much money you made in tips at the time.
Yeah, but you lived in that. You also had a life that is part of disco history. So, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
For those that know the Roxy in New York, that's amazing. Of course, then you went on to a big international career, and I'm just going to name the ones that I sort of know off the top of my head. You can add to it. But of course, Houston, we talked about Houston Grand Opera, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, the Met, Florida Grand Opera, Paris, Glyndebourne, a lot more, I'm sure, right? But pretty quickly, that push forward from Houston started that ball rolling. We had a chat. Another person that I interviewed was Patricia Rissette, and for her it was the Adler Fellowship, not so much Maryla, but being an Adler Fellow that put her in a position that just one thing led to another, and then just the career just started like rolling. So that's, I think, for everybody to understand how important these big young artist programs can be to really launch a career, right?
Absolutely. And it wasn't so obvious at the time. Let's say that maybe Patricia went to the Adler and I was in HGO. This was still when I went to HGO, so I'm talking about the fall of 94 into the spring of 95. There were still singers that were getting the bulk of their program or their training, let's say in Germany. In German houses. So it was David Gockley and Carlisle Floyd that together created the program of the Houston Grand Opera, or I think it was Texas Opera Theater at the time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was the touring.
So that they realized that a lot of American singers, because there were no other opportunities to get to hone your craft and then be able to sing at the top level, because there was also this discrepancy of if you sang at the B or C houses, it was very difficult to get to the A houses. It was really tough. I mean, for my mother, it was extremely tough. And she was a gorgeous singer and a gorgeous woman, impeccable musician. And it was tough for her. And I think things relaxed a little bit by the time I hit the scene. But to have the opportunity to not have to go and do a fest contract in Germany, and a fest is fixed, that's what it means. So you are there for a season or 25 seasons, and you are assigned roles, and you're at work every single day. And a soprano, let's say that sings my repertoire, might sing Liu and Turandot one day, Mimi the next day, 2 days later, Madame Butterfly. You just never know. And then, really other small roles, which would give you a break, but you're going from opera to opera and I think it does give you a good training, but it tires you out. I think it tires you out here and here.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm glad that the program started when they did, to then give the young American singers this opportunity to get the training at home.
It's fantastic. So we need to hear some singing, since we've been talking about singing. We usually watch some videos. We have 3. They're all relatively short. Let's watch. These are all relatively recent and works that are different from each other. So let's listen, Joey. Let's cue up the first one.
Cina mogliettina,
Brava. Brava. So clearly I've forgotten that's what we were starting with. That is not an unusual piece. We all know that. That's Butterfly. We know it very well. However, it's an unusual production. And like, I think it was a great example to eliminate just what we were talking about, because you just went so beautifully down into chest. And also you shaped the middle of your voice with vowels in a way that were very interesting to allow you to get to the top very beautifully. So that production, how many of you have seen that in New York? If raise your hand if you know that. It's Minghella is the director, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, Minghella production. Mm-hmm.
So if you've seen that, I think it's pretty sure it's still in the Met's repertory. If you've not seen it, really see it, because, and if you can see it on HD TV at the Met, see it, because it's, I think, a glorious production, and it uses theater in a way that opera doesn't normally use. And I mean that in terms of theatrical concepts, puppetry, a lot of things that are very interesting that don't normally happen in opera. And I found it to be one of the most moving productions I ever saw at the Met, right? So tell us about Trouble, like working with the puppet baby, right? So the child is
a puppet.
Yeah.
And when I heard about this, I thought, oh my gosh, how is that going to work? So the puppet is the Japanese style of puppetry, and it is guided. Life is given to it by 3 puppeteers that work like this together. So one of them handles the head, the neck, so that, the turning, the head, all of those gestures. Another one handles the arms, the hands, the torso. The other one handles the legs and the feet. And they are always together. They're dressed in black, and they have black hats with a black veil that they can see through, and it's very fluid, very light. So you can see their faces, not necessarily in the audience, but I know that I can. And I noticed that they would breathe with the emotion of the child. And I thought they were being very careful not to. And I said, actually, it helps me if, for example, I'm about to embrace the child, and then they would, as a child, would go, there's mama. I said, of course, they don't speak the words, but I said, please do that, because it gives me so much to feed from and to work with. I realized quickly that by using these incredible artists, puppeteers, doing this with the puppet, the puppet, was able to be much more expressive than any child could be in this production, because they wouldn't have the ability to be. There was another dimension completely of the relationship of mother and child. Yeah,
that's so perfectly stated. And when you see it, so that idea of that bunraku style of puppetry, where you see the puppeteers, very quickly that false world goes away.
Yeah. Two minutes max.
Yeah, and then
false world goes away. Yeah.
And you're focused in on this being, but there was something incredibly concentrated and potent about the relationship of expression between the puppet and Cho-Cho-san every time I've seen it. That doesn't happen with a child. It's really amazing. So if you've not seen it, please see this. What was your experience like in that production? Was it a good experience for you?
I loved it. And the Suzuki in that scene is Maria Tsivchak.
Oh, beautiful singer. Yeah.
A beautiful singer, beautiful soul. She just gives you 110% all the time, just exquisite. Yeah. And Chichon Karel was the conductor. And it was very, very meaningful. To be able to do this gorgeous, iconic role, title character at the Met, when from my bedroom window growing up, I could see Lincoln Center.
Wow.
And I went to so many final dress rehearsals. My mother had friends that were singing there, and she'd get tickets and we'd go. And actually, I saw a final dress rehearsal of Turandot. I keep going back to Turandot, with Franco Corelli singing. I took my teddy bear because I was sure I was going to be bored. And Eleanor Ross, who recently left us, was the Turandot. And she, with her son, came to one of the performances of Butterfly. and I had never met them. And the son found out how to get a note to me to let me know that she had been so moved by my performance. And I got chills because I immediately wrote him back and I said, well, you have no idea what a full circle this is. I have attended your mother's performances at the Met, and I have heard her, and she inspired me greatly.
Wow.
So we later met, and it was just beautiful. It was, and she's, oh my God. Anyway, it's that golden age. She was definitely from the golden age.
Totally. Wow, what a great story. We're going to see 2 more videos, but I want to do a little more talking quickly. And as always is the case, I talk too much. So
no, I talk too much. I'm going to be quiet.
No, because I try to keep this to an hour. But, so in Mimi with us,
yes.
it was a jump in. Like, I think everyone knows we had someone else engaged that didn't work out because of some health issues. So we contacted you, I don't know, how many weeks before rehearsal started? 2?
No, not even.
Less.
I think it was a week. A week. And I had to give an answer that night.
Yeah.
And I got the text. I got a text from my management, and I was in the middle of, because this year what I'm doing with Rice is, as I mentioned earlier, artist in residence.
Yeah.
I begin faculty in July, but artist in residence means I work with all of them. And I was in the middle of a full day of that. And I thought, what? I was like, what? How great that this is happening, but what?
Yeah.
And so I had to wrap my brain around that. And I first had to check at home and check what my son needed to do, what deadlines were coming up for him. And some important deadlines were coming up. So I had to make sure all of that was prioritized for him. I had to make sure that my partner Gabriel was okay with all of this, and actually he flew out with me, and he was super supportive.
It's awesome.
And it was just wonderful, and I'm so glad that I said yes. But I'll tell you, I just felt like putting on shoes that felt a little tight. By that I mean I had not performed since March.
So you had not performed, and how long had it been since you sang Mimi?
Oh, gosh. Well, at least 5.5 years.
So as a singer, do you take a moment and go sing through the arias and all right, that's good, or do you just feel it's in my voice, I'm okay?
I knew it was in my voice, but I still sang through it.
Yeah.
And it felt so light compared to everything else that I had been singing, which is funny because Mimi for a while was the heaviest thing I sang, because I started singing Mimi in January of 1996.
Wow.
The first time I did the role. So and I did it a lot, but now I've done so many butterflies. So it feels very different. Anyway, yeah.
It's very interesting. So you could be like, oh yeah, I can do it. Because you gave us an answer very quickly, and you came in and you were, I think you all know, maybe you don't know as our patrons, we expect our singers to be what we call off book on day one, which means that we have a sing through with our conductor on score, with the music in front of you. And then we moved right into that first day staging, and you have to have your score away. You just have to stand and have the role in your voice and ready to go. So you had it. Like it was as if you had sung Mimi last week. So It was great. Yeah.
Thank God for that long-term memory.
No kidding. Exactly. Okay, so let's hear video number 2, which is another short one. And this may be the one you didn't know I was going to play, but I love it. So let's do that. And it may not be. I may have them out of order. just wanted everyone to remember, if you don't know Regina Onegin, how fabulous the music is. It's something I want to produce. I've been trying to figure out a way to squeeze it into our timeline for quite a while. I sang the role of Onegin when I was a young singer, so it's yeah. So it's really important opera. That production is my favorite production of Onegin, and the world of the entire thing. You saw how she was littered in a room with leaves, right? Mm-hmm. So the metaphor of the leaves are really important, and also sort of big blank open spaces. It's an incredible production that is available for rent. We have already figured out that it can fit on our stage. So when we bring Onegin here, I think that will probably be the one we wind up doing. But once again, if you guys just listen to what she did, you go so beautifully and easy down into your chest. It's like, so you open that bottom up, which is, I also think the reason your top is so expressive is because your bottom is so connected. It's very beautiful. You don't speak fluent Russian. So what was that like?
Oh. Well, I have to give so much credit to Kirill Kuzmin, who is a pianist coach, Russian, and he is staff at HGO. He was a young artist pianist here. And he was still a young artist at the time that I had to prepare this. And I called him and I said, Kirill, can you please teach me this? And he printed out the text in the Cyrillic alphabet, in the IPA, in the word-by-word translation, and then underneath the poetic translation. So I have a booklet with all of that. It was incredible and so well organized. I'm very visual, so if I see it organized in front of me, it's, you can go right through it. The tip I give to people, and I gave it to my son the other day, he had to learn a monologue, and in record time, you learn it backwards. So the letter scene is between 13 and 14 minutes long. So you start by the last word, memorize that, and then, well, of course, after you've panned out all of the IPA, go back to our beer.
Well done.
So you start with the last word, and then second to last word, last word. You keep repeating that a few times, and then you add the third to last, second to last, last. You keep repeating, adding one more word, and repeating all the way to the end. By the time you get to the top, you've memorized that entire page. There is something that clicks in, analytically speaking, that allows you to retain your information. If you try to memorize only starting from the beginning, you will get so flustered and frustrated, you'll give up and you won't get to the end.
Brilliant.
And that's what I implemented for the Czech, for Rusalka, and also for Onegin. But also I had a fantastic prompter, Matt Pyatt at Chicago, who works both in Chicago and San Francisco. In my opinion, the most exquisite, the best prompter in the world.
So I think occasionally in our history as a company, since the 50s, we've employed a prompter, but explain what the prompter does and how that helps you as a singer.
The prompter saves your neck in more ways than you could ever imagine. So if you're looking at a stage, and from your vantage point in the audience, you see that there's like a little box. Let's say that you're San Diego Opera. This is the stage, and then you see a little bit of a lift that might look like only that high from your vantage point from far away. Actually, what's happening is that within that box fits the head of the prompter. They're actually standing in the orchestra pit, but only visible to the singers. And they have a monitor with technology, a video monitor of the conductor, and they have the score in front of them. And what they're there to do, sometimes they're conducting you. If it's a very big scene with chorus and it's a big ensemble, like let's say it's a Verdi ensemble, that big one in Simon Boccanegra, you know, they might have to then give cues to the different people, especially if the piece is very complicated and the conductor has to focus on the orchestra, might not always be able to give the cue to the chorus and to everybody else. Usually, yes, but the prompter is great for that. The prompter, when they're excellent and intuitive and are like this with you, hand in hand, they know by just a look from you when they have to give you that line, and they have to time it just so that if you're singing Liu, when she starts Signore Ascolta, Signore Ascolta, Signore Ascolta, she's repeating it, but she might blank. So if he's going to prompt her, she's going to prompt, Signore Ascolta, Signore ascolta. In that little second,
Yeah.
they whisper it to you, or they mouth it to you.
Yeah.
The timing has to be just so. Without Matt Pyatt, I swear to you, I could not have done that, Tatiana.
The timing and the volume, so the audience doesn't hear that prompter yell a word. There are some interesting recordings from historic Met recordings where you broadcasts where you hear a prompter speak, and some singers that I've seen recently, I'm not going to name names, where you can tell they're sort of living near the prompter's box because they've got to have that thing, right? Because they probably have been in a world where they're traveling back and forth so much that they need that thing. But it is, if it's done properly, it's something that the audience doesn't ever sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you just mentioned another video, and I think it's going to be the last one we're going to watch, and we're almost done with time. You mentioned Rusalka, which is another opera that I'm just desperate to produce here. And I will say, like everybody's on this call will absolutely come to see Onegin and Rusalka. We have a fairly fickle audience. We're trying to make not so fickle. So I'm trying to find the right time to lodge these things in right now. So we're not just doing Butterfly and Tosca. But this Rusalka is also the same Rusalka production I want to do, which is Chicago's production.
I was just going to say, the McVicker is stunning.
It's the most glorious production of Rusalka. This is, if you don't know the opera, it's it's the Little Mermaid story. It's in Czech. So again, another language.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's not the Disney version.
No, absolutely not. It's the original story that's
Christian Andersen, Brothers Grimm. Yeah.
So it's dark in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is the story that the Disney story grew out of, which is a little more innocent in a way. This has darkness, which sort of illuminates the beauty of the story, I think. But Czech, again, a language doesn't trip off like Italian. Lots of consonants to deal with. We talked early on about legato.
Yeah, sometimes there are clusters of 5 consonants together, and I was racking my brain. How do you do that? You have to put a schwa.
Yeah.
Does everybody know what a schwa looks like? That's the neutral vowel. Sorry, this is my geeky IPA self, so
Good.
I know we're out of time.
Do it.
But that's kind of what a schwa would look like. That's the neutral vowel.
Yeah, and it's basically
but you put that in between those clusters, even if it's just one, then you can get it through. Otherwise, forget it.
Well, so you'll know this music because you've heard it so many times, but it's a gorgeous score. So let's listen to this, and we're probably going to not have a lot of time for questions after that, but let's listen to it. I have to say that fits your voice like a glove by the ear. So I don't know how it felt when you sang it, but it's
wonderful.
It's really beautiful. So if you guys want to hear a Rusalka or an Onegin in San Diego, give us a little message so we know that it's something you want. So
Can I just say, I just want to add to your wonderful group here assembled, The Rusalka, if you see it produced, and I know, David, you would organize a beautiful cast. This is the kind of piece that stays with you in a beautifully haunting way. It's a life changer in many ways. You will. I think to not have it would be a sin. I'm sorry. I
No,
just have
that's
to say
perfect.
that.
That's a great thing to say. We
You need to
did
produce it.
we did a Rusalka once with Renee when she was very young, many years ago. And we've done Onegin maybe with Renee. Was Renee or Tatiana? I think we've done Onegin once in our 55-year history, and a Rusalka once. So I think both of them bear.
I think you
repeating,
should
right?
venture and do it again.
I agree. So any questions that we can answer of anyone? Let's see. Oh, look at that. There's a very good, a Russian saying the pronunciation was excellent of your Tatiana.
Spasiba.
Yeah. So everyone's wanting to know when we're going to have you back. So I'm just going to say we're going to work on that.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. So and there's also a couple of things that I want to have a little offline chat with you about your role in Houston, which I know is an artistic advisor, but some things that we are, you know, about our Opera en Español initiative that we're putting together.
Yes, and I've spoken with Andrea.
Excellent. So we have some new works that are coming up that I think could be interesting. And I'm just going to say this in front of everybody as a potential co-production with Houston. There's an opera that we're commissioning about Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera.
Oh, nice.
And also there's a very good Katrina role that could be perfect for Ana María Martínez. Just think. So we'll chat more about that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was great. I hope this was somewhat fun for you. Our audience adores you.
Experience. Thank you.
Loved so much having you with us. And I cannot wait until the next time you'll be back in San Diego.
Thank you, David. Really, it was an honor to be with all of you. And I thank you deeply for that beautiful experience. And I thank everyone who's joined us today. It's really lovely to have you here. And I have to say, as an artist, I'm grateful when a wonderful audience and donors and supporters can give so much encouragement to a company, especially now, because we need it now more than ever.
Thank you, Ana. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Happy New Year. We'll see you in a couple of weeks at the next one. Good night.